Good evening and welcome to another Talk at the Table. Yes, I've been waiting for this. Today, we've got two wonderful people at the table. They had really no idea of what this was going to look like, but I promised them that I would go light on them. You have to understand something. I don't get this opportunity often. So I got to take advantage of it while I can. That's why they laugh. But seriously, today we have Ken Hutchinson and Daphne Moore, two integral members of TCDC's development projects, story unfolding, community connections. They make it happen. So I just want to give you all a peek behind the scenes about what it's like to do community development in the city, as well as allow them to kind of tell a little history about themselves. So, yes.
Oh yeah, you got us off guard.
Yeah.
Totally unexpected.
Yeah. So, who wants to go first and just give a little synopsis of background?
Ken, I'll let you go first.
Ooh, see how that switched? A minute ago, it was a different story. So if I'm gonna go first, well, good afternoon, of course, as Pastor said, Ken Hutchinson. How do I go? Development. It's an interesting perspective. There's all different types of development, but if we're talking about real estate, community, social, people development, I kind of box them all into the same because they all impact each other tremendously. And so you can't have one without the other. And then if you're missing a piece of it, it becomes a weak perspective of a development. And so with the church being part of it, brings it all home, definitely for me, because of the role in which I feel the church plays in development and the soul of our community. So for me, it's very important to have and an honor to be part of the church's team when it comes to perspectives, when it comes to development. I've been in the development game but about 23 years. My background originally, believe it or not, comes from management and then law enforcement. So that transition from that perspective to the development world, it's like night and day. But believe it or not, what it did for me, it gave me a different perspective as a developer. Because for me, coming from law enforcement allowed me to see communities from a different perspective. And then when I transitioned to the development world and left that world, it gave me a truly perspective on how home ownership was very important, a stake in the community is very important, and how the entire community works in the sense of being a viable community. And so for me, it was a pathway to development from a different perspective that gave me a competitive edge when it came to development. And so 20 some years in the game, I've done pretty much a lot of different types, from affordable housing, tax credit deals, LIHTC deals, bond deals, TIF deals, historical tax credit deals, mixed use, pretty much a lot of different types of development structuring deals. So that's me. Hello.
Ta-da!
Back to your side. I'm passing the baton.
My side of the Delmore.
Yeah, the other side.
Hello, everyone. I'm Daphne Moore, and I come from the development, community development, economic development side. I grew up in East St. Louis, so I was always trying to figure out how to make my community better. And I knew that this is not how I knew how once the Black community was, how vibrant and beautiful it was. And I actually watched a city die in front of me. And once I went to school, I was trying to figure out, well, what do I want to do with my life? You know, you graduate and you're like, I don't know. So I ended up going to Jackson State University. Hey, Dion. And getting my master's degree in urban and regional planning. And I eventually ended up working for the city of St. Louis. And my mission has always been to rebuild the Black community. I don't mind helping other people, but I really wanted to focus on the Black community because I know how great we are. And oftentimes we have just been caught up in systematic racism and just not giving our fair share, our reparations. So it was important to me that I figure out how I can help my community. So I became an urban planner for the city, and then eventually got into economic development with Berkeley. And then I helped the city of Delwood rebuild after the Ferguson fires, and then really after the Delwood fires. And then I became city manager of East St. Louis and helped them rebuild. And just really have been active in this region. And anytime Pastor Alexander calls, you know, I run most of the time because he has the heart for the people and the community. I love what TCDC is doing, and it just makes me want to be a part of helping our people be better. So I did the master plan for Arlington Grove and worked on North Sarah. And now I'm the opportunity zone person for the city. So just really helping the North Side do what it needs to do.
Awesome. So now that we got the preliminaries out the way, you know, everybody can see now why TCDC is able to do the things that it does because of this caliber of talent that God has centered here. I want to throw this question out, and whoever wants to pick it up first can. My first question is, going forward, right? Mm-hmm. What do you all see after doing what you've done and doing it across the city, and in many cases, not just in St. Louis City proper, but across St. Louis, across on the ill side? What do you see are the biggest obstacles to moving things forward for us?
I always go to leadership.
Oh, you jumped in first.
Yes, I did. You know, they gonna give me a hard time, so y'all just excuse them. But I think our biggest issue, and I've said this since the 20 years I've been here, is that the St. Louis region has a leadership problem. And what I mean by that is that our leaders are not focused on the needs of the community in a way that is going to get things done. As someone who has been in the hot seat as a city administrator and city manager, I look at the city as I know what can get done, and I know how long it takes. When I was in the city of Delwood, everybody told me what I couldn't do. Well, with less than 2 years, we were able to rebuild West Florissant and Chambers, and we brought most of the businesses back along West Florissant. And it's not so much about how much money you have, it's about leadership and your will and how to build relationships. And we haven't built the right relationships at the top. I think the leadership of Pastor Alexander and others like him is helping to move the needle, but our leadership needs to move like Pastor is moving in others so that we really can get things done. I don't worry about politics. I worry about getting things done. I'm a results-driven person, and anything that I touch, thankfully, has been able to grow, but that's because I'm intentional in how I do things, and I don't think that our leadership is always that way. It's too much fighting.
Anything you would add to that, Ken?
That's a good point. I think that's a great reference point and a perspective that it starts with the top and it trickles down. And so definitely it would be a void in leadership and having that perspective and that vision, along with unity and collaborativeness. Mm-hmm. You know, mm-hmm. Working in collaborative relationships from that perspective as a community in St. Louis. If we want to be even more frank, you can use the term systematic racism, but it's a little bit more complicated than that in the sense as to this, is that it definitely references back to your leadership, because if you don't surround yourself with the right people in those particular leadership positions, then you can't impact communities that don't look like you. Because you don't have the background nor the experiences. And so it's easy to be in a comfort zone with what you're used to and who you used to being around. And so when you are evaluating leadership, always look at who they surround themselves with, how diverse is that group of people and from that particular leader, and what position they put people that are different for them in those top positions. That's very important, because if not, what you're going to have is a vacuum in the situation where all the dollars, all the capital, all the resources are going to one sector of the city. And you can easily say it's race, but it's deeper than race.
It is deeper than race.
Because a lot of that is that, who am I comfortable with? Where do I live? So if I'm the leader of a city and I live in one sector of the city, and then all of my staffing and personnel lives in that same sector of the city.
He's speaking my language, ain't
He is. He right on your street.
Yes, yes. Where do you think the focus of capital and resources are going to go?
Yeah.
I mean, they're going to go to that sector of the city in which those people live. And so if that staff is not diverse to be able to speak up and fight for the other sectors of the city, then that's what's going to happen. I mean, that's why I say it's a little bit more complicated than just to use the term race. It goes back to what Daphne said. It starts from leadership, but then you have to dive deeper into that leadership about placement of people and personnel and choosing the right people and the right perspectives and folks who are diverse, not just in race, but in experiences.
Yeah,
and so, I would definitely piggyback on that, Daphne, that it starts with leadership.
That's good. I agree, and I think it's on all levels. It's city government, it's civic,
yes,
it's church community,
all of it.
As I've shared with both of you, it's a direct indictment when you drive through the city, especially the north side, and you drive down blocks and streets where there's churches on each end of that block, and that block looks a certain way. We can make excuses, we can say this and that has happened, but at the end of the day, we have to take some ownership for 100%. It looking the way that it does. Because we, sometimes have hoarded resources in these walls and not pushed our people beyond the walls to see that God and his kingdom cares about all things and not just this one, not just these four walls. So I would agree with you all. Having said that, let me turn it on its head. Then, do you think we have potential to do some things here? And if so, what poises us for being able to rewrite the narrative? Or I don't even know if rewrite the narrative is the right thing to say. Court a new narrative.
And we're talking about St. Louis or the St. Louis region, right? Or are we talking about...
Is that me first or you first this time?
You can go first.
Are you sure?
I'm talking right now, twofold. I'm talking north side, where, we are kind of honing in. And I'm talking regionally as well.
Go ahead, Ken.
You sure? Thank you, my dear. No, I think on a more serious note, I think it's wide open now. I think, and it's not to just say this lightly, and I'm not going to say that lightly. I think with individuals like yourself, there is hope, and I speak that seriously because the church has been missing very much, and it's if you look at our history as a people, it's been the most stable and the most important piece to our community. And so that void from a political leadership, there's been a void in the spiritual leadership for as far as I would say. There's been a huge void. And there, I'm not blaming anybody for that void, but I always tell people you have to go back to the basics. And the basics for me is every day you wake up and you look into the mirror, are you happy or proud of what you see in the mirror? And if you are not, then you need to regroup and restart your day every day. and begin to change what you don't like. And so for me, the church, it's the opportunity for a new paradigm shift with new leadership in churches, and understanding that the church business is a business. You can't take the old traditional way of doing church. It doesn't work in the modern day time. Our people need too many things. Our people need more than just spiritual. They need leadership that can make them whole, and they need leadership that can see them and all their needs as a village that needs all these different pieces. And the church has to be the one now to step up to the plate. And I think the reason there's hope is to have somebody like you now leading the charge, who's as humble as they come, who from the day I met him has never focused on himself and his attention. And really to this day, he don't like me saying it, he still shies away from that, Daphne. But
he does. He a little cray sometimes.
But he's
See, that's that gang connection going on behind the scenes.
He's a mountain. You know what I'm saying? And God is the Creator is just doing some beautiful, beautiful things with him and his leadership and what he's doing and impacting our community. And it's an honor and it's a privilege just to be part of the movement and what he's doing in God's name. And so for me, I see hope now. I really do. I think we have an opportunity to really change with this type of leadership. And I know what God is going to do with it. And he's going to continue to spread it. And what he puts together in his name, no one's going to be able to stop it this go around, because it came from the right place and the right spirit and the right mind. And so he put the right team together now to move this movement and begin to take care of all the different needs of our people. And to see his work, man, it's beautiful. I'm just glad to be around.
I don't even know if I need to even add anything to that, but I will.
What? We got that on camera. Oh, Lord.
But I will.
Jesus is not.
So from I'm always a hopeful, visionary, relationship person. And if you know me, I crack the whip out, clap back a little bit, just a little bit, in the name of Jesus.
Just a little bit.
And but I'm intentional in how I move and how I think. And when God gives me a big vision, I want to take on the world and I want to get everything done today. And they have to slow me down a little bit. But time can be 30 days or it can be a year. And in that time, how do you use it? We have a great region. We have something that most regions don't have, which is land that is available to be redeveloped. And we also have people there are so many talented people in St. Louis that unfortunately the talent is not always used. And a lot of people leave St. Louis because they feel frustrated. But I think that this is a turning point in our region that we can start to rebuild. You have NGA, you have TCDC doing things that nobody has done, like Mercy Hospital. Come on, y'all, come on with it. So yes, we have an opportunity to reshape this region. I think St. Louis has an opportunity to grow, but it has to be intentional, and it's about relationship building. We are not we're here because Pastor called me one day and was like, "Come on, girl," and then but I think that those relationships, we've known each other for a long time. Who knew that it would come back together this way?
Yeah.
But I do think that God is always intentional in what he does. And I'm where I need to be. Pastor's where he needs to be, and Ken's where he needs to be.
Am I? No, I'm just saying. Yes, definitely.
So that helps bring everything together. And that's what we have to do as a region and as a community. We have to put ego aside and really say, hey, it's about the people.
It's about the people.
Not about, you can make your money, but first put the people first.
Yeah.
And I think that's what you have always done and that we try to do on a daily basis.
Yeah,
Definitely.
Working with you all has certainly brought me hope. It really has, because you're right. I've watched talent leave. I've watched people, I always find this interesting. Somehow people think if I move, everything's going to change. Well, if you don't do anything to change you just taking whatever that hot mess was here, wherever you move to. And it's going to collide at some point with whatever issues are in their city. I'm not denying our issues. I just think that it's time to write another narrative. I think for too long, the narrative that has been written is doom and gloom because it benefits certain people. Because if you can keep land cheap, then you can come back around and pick it up and then do with it what you want to do with it. And just herd people around like cattle. That irritates me to no end. And so I think it's important for those of us who do know or get a chance to be in positions to see certain things, to speak up, say something, push back, do what we can. Because if not, it's just going to keep happening. So I have hope from working with you all to know that, hey, there's some like-minded people. And then I get a privilege that a lot of pastors don't. I get the privilege of a church who's saying, let's roll up our sleeves and do this.
Yes.
I've got family, wife, kids, extended family. Let's do this. A lot of pastors, believe it or not, don't have that.
Right.
They spend more time arguing with their church boards about what the next carpet color gonna be.
Right.
And we got to get another musician because that chord got to be right. Because when I strike up that tune, I need it to be in sync and in harmony.
Man.
Right. Never mind, everything else around you is falling apart. It's falling apart.
That's
I share this story. This happened 5 years ago, and I will never forget it. Young man in a community meeting, group of pastors in the room, and he's listening to the pastors talk, and I'm just listening. A lot of them are my seniors, and I know for some we're not on the same page, but nevertheless I respect. I'm sitting there, I'm listening, and the young man's listening, and then finally he says, I hear y'all talking. But he called up a specific pastor's name. I ain't gonna say his name. He said, your church is right next to my house. We went through being hungry. We went through my dad beating my mama. I mean, he just started naming stuff. And he said, y'all never ever even knocked on my door.
Wow.
Y'all came, y'all parked, y'all took up the parking spaces, y'all had y'all good time on Sunday, and then y'all packed it up and went back home. When he said that, I just sat there. I got to take that. Even though it wasn't our church, still, it's a part of the kingdom. And so I had to wrestle with that and go, what can we do better? What is specifically God calling us to do better so that doesn't become somebody else's story?
Right.
And so I do have hope now that you got certain leaders now rising up in churches in different places who are going to churches is more than just us gathering for a good time. What is God saying about his kingdom and advancement? So I agree with y'all. So last question, and then y'all out the hot seats, right? Here's the question. So with those things being said, this is twofold. What do you think needs to happen at the community level amongst residents to aid in this change and continuing this hope and this movement forward? And then who else do you think we need to be including to continuing the things moving forward?
Well, as a resident, I'm a resident, first. And for me, I've always tried to be active in something. So I always tell people, get active in your community. And I used to sit on the business district of my neighborhood. But I also volunteer. Like, you can't ask somebody to clean your neighborhood up if you won't pick no trash up. And participate. It's not always about joining a church or an organization, but you can be involved. Even if I got an hour a week to give to my community, make that hour work. Or if you know once a month that you can volunteer for 4 hours on a Saturday, it's about all of us pulling our resources and our talent together to fight for our community. Because one of the things that I'm a very vocal person, as you probably all can see, but
no, you had us fooled.
I do, you know, I'm the first person to call my alder person. I'll be texting like, look, we had an incident on this corner and, you know, we need some help. And I hate feeling hostage in my community, in my neighborhood. Like, I don't even walk anymore. And I live downtown. I don't even walk like I used to because, you know, things are a little crazy right now. But I've made up in my mind that I'm not going to be held hostage in my own dang community. Like, that is not finna happen. So I'm like, I'm finna take my street back. I'm finna take my block back. And if that means telling on Leroy or whoever it is, like, we have to start speaking up. We have to fight for the resources, or we have to become a resource. Like, I'm a person, if I give my $5 to a campaign or whatever it takes, if I have to donate a case of water or give $50 to the church, I can't do it, but here's some money to do XYZ. And I think we have to start doing that, because if we're not investing in our community, why should anybody else? Now, what was your second question? Because who else needs to be at the table? So, I really think that we really have to be vocal about, we have alderpersons, we have elected officials, we have to get them at the table. But I do think we need to meet with all the community organizations, because we have to start saying, okay, you're good at crime prevention. You're good at feeding people. You're good at giving resources to educate people on finance. Like, how do we pull all the organizations and leadership in our community so that we're working toward a goal of making people better? And that would be my answer. See how quick and sweet that was?
Whew, man. How do I top that? No. Yeah, that was quick and sweet. Definitely. For as a resident, because I'm a resident, and I've always been active though, so that's just how my mom raised me to be part of. Either you part of the solution or you part of the problem. And so my mom always raised me to be part of the solution to anything, and don't complain unless you're being active. So. And so I think from a resident perspective is lead by example. It's not really the big things. You don't have to be part of every aspect of what's happening in the community. Just do your part. And so if your part is just coming up every morning and picking up trash in front of your residents, you are participating in the image, the plight, and you leading by example. And I think that's the first step. It's something as simple as that, because that can become something that they're going to recognize, that people will see that. And so for some people, they'll start looking at themselves back to the mirror. Like, Miss Johnson gets up every day, every morning, and walks outside and cleans up in front of her house. You know what I'm saying? And so sometimes that causes a dominoes effect. And then the next person sees that and say, you know what? I can do that. I can't do this. I may not have the resources to do that. I may not even have time to go to meetings because I got 6 kids and I got to work with their schedules and all that. But as simple as you getting up in the morning and you doing something consistently every day that everybody can see you doing your part, is how it starts as a neighbor. You know what I'm saying? And then some other neighbor does something else. The next thing you know, everybody is doing something, because everybody now feels like, hey, they doing something. That's a challenge for me to do something. I'm a top. That's just human nature. I'm a top what they doing. Next thing you know, it's not just you. Now the kids are involved. Miss Johnson doing this, Mr. Davis doing that, they doing this, we doing this. And so it becomes a movement. And then that movement now spreads. and it becomes an identity for that particular community. And then you start to see the results of that movement, and that particular one block, the face of that block can change. And then from there, leadership now can connect with that group. Then that group now is connecting with leadership. Now leadership is giving them an even bigger perspective and how to take it to the next level. Then it's a dominoes perspective. So it can be something that small, that minute, that can help and start the fire to change an entire community as a neighbor. And so who else should participate in the process? I think in communities, we've been hammered and beat down, especially in the African American community, when it comes to role models and identity. We've come up, and the strive was to always do better and get out. And now we've seen what has happened to getting out. Mm-hmm. It has taken away all the values. It's left the Black community in the cities with the no hope, no vision, because you have to have a balance in everything. So, there has to be a balance. When you was coming up to school, there was the smartest kid, there was the mid kid, there was the lowest kid when it came to academic. But together, they brought up the average, because where you had the smartest kid would reach back and help the lowest kid. The middle kid would count on the smartest kid. And so they created a balance. And if you look at test results, that's how those schools was able to, when the final test came out, when they took the national test, their percentage was right here. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And so I think that's part of the whole philosophy is that we have to bring that back into our communities. And so you have the balance. And so in short, at the end of the day, I think you have to say, we want this, we want that. We all want the best of neighborhoods and community. But at the end of the day, I would always go back to a higher power and a higher perspective. And I say this, the answer to that has to be, what are you willing to sacrifice for those things though? At the end of the day, you can want the world, but what are you willing to give up for those things? And so that 5-10 minutes in the morning that neighbor gets out and clean up around their house, that's that sacrifice. So that's what I say. What are you willing to give up? What are you willing to sacrifice for what you want and what you want to see in your community and what you want to have in your community as a neighbor?
Ooh, that is so true. And I think that when you look at us three, we have sacrificed, because I was supposed to leave like 2 years ago from St. Louis. Maybe before then. And it's a sacrifice to work in government. It's a sacrifice to be a pastor. It's a sacrifice to be a developer in a Black community that everybody keeps telling you to give up on. Yeah. So, I love my community, and that's why I'm here, because this got to be love, and the Lord told me I couldn't go nowhere. So I was like, since I'm here, but I love my community. I love Black people, and sometimes even though it's hard, I always feel that it's worth it, because I know that our young people want better, but they don't know how to get to better. So it's up to us to help them see something different. I grew up in East St. Louis. I know what it's like to be called to be treated like a criminal. As a Black little girl who just trying to sightsee, and the lady grabbing her purse because she heard we was from East St. Louis. I know what that feels like. I know what it feels like to be the only Black woman in her field with a bunch of men. So
she always referenced men.
I know.
That's the thing about the men thing.
But I love men. But that comes with a different dynamic. But at the same time, it's worth it. Yeah. I think that it's worth it to really fight for what St. Louis can be. And we are in a time where we need everybody to come together, because if we don't, this community is going to die. And that to me is not an option. And it shouldn't be for anyone else.
Wow. Well, listen, I can't add nothing to what they just said. That is real. That is truth. We really are at a pinnacle moment, I believe, in our city. And it's going to take all hands on deck. And the reason why I asked the last question is because most times, and it didn't used to be this way in our communities, it's pointing the finger over, they need to do, and they should do.
Yeah.
Everybody has to take their part in this. And when everybody does their part in this, then God is glorified and he graciously moves and does things.
Correct.
I think oftentimes we forget that, like, we look at civil rights movement and we look at our history and we go, but it was a bunch of them. But it had to start somewhere.
Correct.
And when you look at the history of it, it wasn't but a few who started. And that momentum grew. And as a result of that momentum, God worked through it, and we have some of the advancement we have today. And I think we're at that point again. So thank you all for what y'all do. I mean that. Thank you for coming and sharing. And I'm praying for those of you who watch this and or following these conversations that we're having over the last several months, that you see that God is up to something right here. You if God's calling you to move, great. But at the same time, it's not you got to move somewhere for God to move. That's right. Maybe God is waiting on you to move where you're at. And then in that, you'll see something miraculous. So thank you all for your hard work. Thank you for your thank you for your expertise and your willingness. And I'm gonna end with this. Oftentimes we think, and Ken touched on this, and you did too, Daphne, that people cannot collaborate.
Correct.
We come from 3 different churches, 3 different backgrounds, and God is working through that. So I'm saying that to say, let's stop using where people come from and where they been and where they live. And let's figure out for those who are willing and interested. Because that's the hard part, I think, for me, is figuring out who's really interested in it versus who wants the photo op.
Correct.
Or to make some money.
That's correct.
Let's find, prayerfully discern who those folk are and keep this going forward. So, we're going to come back again later, show off some project stuff, talk about some other things that we can't even get into within this half-hour time.
That's correct.
But we see y'all on next Wednesday. Take care, and God bless.
God bless.